Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Conscious Entrepreneur Podcast. We just wrapped up the Conscious Entrepreneur Summit. It was last week in Boulder, Colorado. Absolutely amazing experience. Stay tuned for some analysis, some snippets, some deep dives, some reactions over the coming weeks. So we've got that coming up, and I'm excited to share that stuff with you in the near future. What I'm also excited to share with you is new voices here on the Conscious Entrepreneur Podcast, specifically the voice of Sarah Lockwood. And I'm going to talk to Sarah today because she is going to be taking over as new host of this podcast. This is someone who has a lot of entrepreneur experience. She has been involved in our community for a long time, and I'm really excited to take this next step with Sarah and have her hosting this podcast. We're also going to do a bunch of episodes together. And so super excited about that. Sarah Lockwood, thanks for joining. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be here with you, Alex. Alex isn't going away. There will still be plenty of his voice here on the show, but I am thrilled to for him to pass the baton to me. And I'm excited to sort of be the voice of the listeners here and hopefully leading our listeners through some conversations that will help them to continue all of the amazing conversations that we started at the summit and to get to learn and listen to thought leaders and entrepreneurs and CEOs and really find ways to live consciously as humans and as entrepreneurs and to build truly impactful businesses for ourselves, for our families, for our communities, and for our world.
Fantastic. Well, why don't we tell people a little bit about you? So I've known you for a couple of years. Your company HiveCast has been producing and editing and working on our podcast for the entire existence. So something like 90 episodes at this point.
Right.
But tell us about you and your entrepreneurial journey, and what is it that's attracting you to the conscious entrepreneur community?
Absolutely. Well, I am the CEO of HiveCast, and we are a podcast production and coaching company. We work with entrepreneurs and experts and thought leaders to help them build their personal brands and build podcasts that help their businesses in a number of different strategic ways. And, I have been a huge supporter of entrepreneurship in Colorado for a long, long time. I've been here since 1999, I guess I've been in Colorado. But I've been an entrepreneur since, I don't know, I think I started being an entrepreneur when I was 7. Mostly when you talk to entrepreneurs or you talk to them, well, what was your first job? It's often under the age of 10. But yeah, it's part of my DNA. I have worked in advertising. I have worked in a lot of digital advertising in the past in other businesses that I've owned. And, I've had the privilege to work with a number of huge brands and Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies in a lot of strategic capacities. But, in about 2017, I guess, I really decided that for my own personal interest, I wanted to spend more of my time working directly with founders and business owners and helping them be successful. Because truly, 99% of the businesses in the United States are owned by small businesses, and they're entrepreneurial endeavors. It's a huge part of people's jobs. Our job force is held largely by people who are, small and growing. Not necessarily small, but obviously our attempts are always to grow very large and impact many, many people. So, I just think it's an important place. It's where I wanted to spend my time. And I have learned a lot as an entrepreneur. I have learned a lot in community with very successful entrepreneurs. And I'm so excited to keep learning from the people who come on the show and to ask the questions that our listeners, are really thinking about.
And so tell us a little bit about HiveCast. How long has this business been around? What's your experience been running a podcast agency?
Well, we've been around almost 5 years. We've literally launched hundreds of podcasts from scratch. We have many, many podcasts that are in the top 2% of podcasts nationally. We have some podcasts that are in the top 10 in Apple Podcasts. So we're not just good at launching at them, we're good at helping them be successful and get business results for our clients. It is truly like, it is the love of my life to get to talk to people and help them get their thoughts out into the world and own the platform that they're speaking on and help them thrive in that capacity. It's really, really fun to see people grow in this space. Everybody starts at episode 1. Everyone starts at episode 1. So, the most successful people will record an episode, people that are huge names. And at the end, they'll say, did I do a good job? Mm-hmm. Was that good? There's a huge amount of vulnerability in learning something new. And I truly enjoy coaching. I truly enjoy sharing and collaborating with entrepreneurs and just helping them build something creative from scratch. And I tell you over and over, these people tell me this is the most fun thing I do at work.
Well, good. Yeah. I mean, I can confirm. Doing this podcast has been tremendous fun. If I look back over the 80 whatever episodes that I've done, I would like to think that I've grown and evolved as a podcast host. You can tell me that with your good analysis and benchmarking and knowledge. But if I think back, the first few episodes, I was learning. I was figuring this stuff out. I wasn't sure how much I wanted to share, or what sort of questions to ask. And one of the pieces of feedback that I got from people is they were like, tell your story more, was what people would tell me, right? They'd want to hear more of my voice. And that, at the beginning I was like, no one, like, who wants to hear my story? I'm here to interview all these other people. And then I got a little bit more comfortable sharing what was going on for me and the journey. And I think that sort of, loosened things up for me a lot. One of the things that has consistently been a theme on this podcast and is going to continue is we have incredibly talented guests. Like, our guests are unbelievable people. They've built awesome businesses. They've written incredible books. They've done all this really, really cool stuff. And one of the most common things that they'll say to me, like once we stop recording and then we say, hey, how'd it go? Is they say, that was unlike any other podcast I've ever been on. Because we're not just talking about the mechanics of business. If you want to talk about the mechanics of business, there's a gajillion podcasts and videos and conferences and all this stuff that you can go to. If you want to learn the inner journey, if you want to figure out how to get all this stuff inside to work so that you can go out there and build the business of your dreams, Conscious Entrepreneur is the place to be doing that. And that's what we're going to be continuing. And so I think that's something that I'm really glad to see continuing. We're going to pass off to you. I think you'll do a great job of syncing up with that. Have you started to think yet about, like, what are your best top questions going to be? What are your zingers going to be? How are you going to get people to really open up and tell you what's really going on?
Bring your tissues. No. I really always say that the best way that you can prepare for a podcast is to really spend time understanding and learning about your guest for conversation podcasts. So you can expect that I'm going to do my research. And one of the best interviewers, somebody who I really admire as an interviewer, is actually the guy who hosts the Hot Ones, the interview show where they eat the wings, the progressively hotter wings. And it's his research team that makes that podcast so good. And I do believe good research. I will do my best to bring on guests that are really sharing something that we can learn from, something that our audience is going to care about, and their lives are going to be enriched by spending the time to listen. And I promise that I will be an informed host, and I will be asking, the inquiring minds want to know questions, so that every time you subscribe and that podcast is downloaded, it's going to be a juicy show that's going to help you in your life and in your business.
So when you think about your journey and what attracted you to come and work on this podcast and first start just by supporting the podcast and then say, hey, I'd like to be more deeply involved and taking over as host. what are you hoping to get out of this? What's in it for you? What's calling you into this journey?
Right. It is an interesting thing to figure out. You're raising your hand to say, I want to spend a lot of time. Hosting a podcast is not a lightweight lift,
Right.
and to do it well, really does take some effort. And I raised my hand because I do believe that podcasts in general are a incredible way to get access to information for free, usually in very bite-sized formats that you can really make actionable. And for me, I first of all, love the idea of being able to, have my little dream list of people that I'm dying to talk to, and I want to ask questions and I want to have conversation and I want to share my thoughts and learn from them. So this is an incredible opportunity for me to do that. But it's also a way to participate in this community in a more intense way. I get a lot out of the people that we both know, the community, and I hope that I can help everyone who maybe doesn't have access to our little part of the world here in Colorado, bring that to people who might be farther away, but who, as we've talked about before, many of us are sharing the same thoughts and fears and challenges and obstacles. Most of them are things that we're creating on the inside. A lot of what we fight against is stuff that we can actually control. So I have a good friend who says, if you're the problem, you're the solution. And when you realize that we're a lot of our own problem, we're getting in our own way. If we can unlock those problems, think of what we can create in the world. Think of how we can impact our listeners, their employees, their entire community of people that are involved in their business, either as customers or employees, or the entrepreneurial impact is huge. So I just really love the idea of participating more deeply and in this way. Something I'm really passionate about, and I'm really privileged. Thank you for, entrusting me with this thing that you've built. I certainly have listened to more hours of this show, and my team has listened to more hours of this show than probably even you have. But it is true. I really love this show, and I love what you've built, and I'm excited to continue it and evolve it.
What's your favorite episode? Let me put you on the spot.
Oh, I've long shared with you that I really enjoyed the Chris Schwalbach episode. It was a great story of an entrepreneur who was really looking down the barrel of handing the keys to a new CEO. So vetting out a new CEO, actually going through that transition, sort of running beside, and then, kind of exiting and having a really intimate, honest, and vulnerable, conversation about what that was like, from a business point of view, but even more so inside, what did that do to identity, to ego, to his home life? We had a lot of really intimate conversation about that. And it really, I think, made me think about, gosh, how much of my identity is wrapped up in my business? How much of my ego is about my accomplishments versus, my business accomplishments versus, maybe some more substantive things. So it was a conversation that I enjoyed, and it was a conversation that I reflected a lot on. And it's actually a conversation that I hope we'll be able to continue on this show, and maybe even tell, the rest of the story.
Great. Yeah, I think that's an awesome idea to try to pull these together. In preparing for this conversation with you, I was reflecting on my experience with the podcast and thinking back. I can't say that I have a particular favorite episode. I mean, I'm grateful to all the guests who have come on and shared stuff and shared things that they have not done publicly. I do think we have some real standout episodes. But when I was reviewing the list, I was thinking about there was one, the interview with Tammy Simon. This came out in April of 2024. I was so nervous interviewing Tammy because she is such a badass. And I don't get nervous a lot. And this was one of these ones where I was just like, ooh, and you can hear it in the intro. You can hear it in my in how I started talking to her, because I was like, oh man, I'm interviewing literally like one of the best interviewers, like one of the OG conscious entrepreneurs in the entire world. And it did take me a little while to warm up for that conversation.
Yeah. Well, like I said, everybody starts on episode 1, and you have been, I think you're a great interviewer, and you have definitely grown as an interviewer. And in fact, you've loved podcasting so much, you took it to your next adventure. And your podcast is something that you're continuing with.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And this, you're referring to the fact that I run the Account Management Secrets podcast, which is under the Amplify umbrella, which is my day job. If Conscious Entrepreneur is my labor of love, then the day job is Account Management Secrets and Amplify, and that's something I am going to be continuing with the support of HiveCast. So, I'm a huge fan. I think there's a lot left for Conscious Entrepreneur. I think there's a lot to do. I think there's a really valuable service here because, firstly, we misglorify, if that's a word, we misglorify hustle culture. And that really, the weight of that falls on entrepreneurs' shoulders. Entrepreneurs all of a sudden feel like, I've got to be working 80 hours a week. I've got to be doing this. I got to be doing all this crazy stuff. And I'm comparing myself. It's like they say, don't compare your own insides to somebody else's outsides, or don't compare your beginning to someone else's end. And so, you see the newspaper and like, oh, this person did this and this person did that. And there's a tremendous amount of stress that builds up on the entrepreneur who starts to compare themselves to others.
Mm-hmm.
And, that plus hustle culture is really something that we need to shift the conversation on. And this podcast does that, because people come on and they talk about, hey, look, there's ways to get through burnout. There's ways to prevent burnout. There's ways to overcome the demons in your head. There's ways to reorganize your physical body, right, in a way that's going to help you be more successful. And then we hear from incredibly cool people, right? Like we hear from people who have been there and done that and gone out and built incredible companies. Tony Jamous, Jim Barnett, like people who have really created amazing companies. Sadie Lincoln from Bar 3. Like these are people who have built big companies, right? Who are making a major impact on the world, and who are willing to get out there and say, hey, here's how I got through it. Here's the inner strength I drew on. Here are the ways I had to rethink about whatever issue was in front of me. And when you realize that, like, oh, wow, even these people who are famous and well-known and have had huge external successes, they also had to go through this stuff. That gives all of us entrepreneurs courage. So people who are earlier in their journey, it gives you courage, it gives you resilience, make you feel like, you know what, I can do this. And to me, that's the conversation that we are still having and I'm going to continue to have on this podcast.
100%. I'm behind it. I'm there for it. I will advocate for the value in every single episode. And I do believe that, we don't have access to sit in a mastermind or sit in an accountability group with these people. But when you do that, when you're in those communities, the activity of experience sharing, it's not business advice, it's experience sharing. And when you get the benefit of the experience shares from these people, and they're here, they know the conversation they're going to have. They've signed up for this. So they're not going to be giving the same answers or answering the questions that they ask on other podcasts. That's why they've given you that feedback, right? They're here for a different kind of conversation, and you're going to get access to the experience shares of somebody who has, succeeded hugely, failed hugely, felt the feelings you're feeling, gotten through, been on the other side. Sometimes they've won and sometimes they've lost, just like we all do. And we'll talk about it.
So any changes you're going to be making to the podcast?
I'm always about how do I apply this to my own life? How do I put this into action? Mm-hmm. The world is full of more information than we could ever put to work in our lives. And I think that's one of the things I don't like about podcasts is you can just listen and listen and listen and consume and do nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's actually, it feels like you're doing something, and it's actually a form of procrastination, I think, or it's a form of busy work, chasing our tails that's actually like not productive. So one thing I really want to do and maybe bring to light a little bit more as the show evolves is how can we take this away? How can we put it into our life and actually like get the advice and the action items that that these people have used. And I'm hoping that it can be a little bit different. There are themes that come back over and over again. And which is wonderful. It's a reinforcing thing, right? Because a lot of the things that our guests talk about are things that, repetition's the key to learning. So we should all learn from them. But I hope I can have, dig a little deeper and find some more nuggets of things that people can put into action.
So as we wrap up here, let me ask you some of the questions that I love to ask all of our guests.
Okay.
You've been an entrepreneur for a long time. What are your habits, routines, go-to things that you do to make sure that you stay on the right path here, that you don't get overwhelmed with the ups and downs of entrepreneurial life?
I have grown by being in community with other people that are at my same stage of business, and and also surrounding myself with people who are, who have gone even further and farther than I have yet. I think that I've grown in my willingness to be vulnerable and to share and to show, to show some weakness. I think when I was younger, that was too threatening, and I wasn't able to do that. I've grown in that way. And so having that community and maintaining it actively, asking for help, asking for experience shares, asking for accountability, are some of the habits that have helped me get where I am. And I think that will also help me get where I want to go.
And what are the resources that you draw on for inspiration? So books, videos, podcasts, where do you go to fill your cup?
Well, I love to read. I'm a huge reader. But I also obviously listen to podcasts all the time.
What's your most recommended book? What's the one that you're constantly like handing out to people or telling people about?
Let's see. There's a great book by Debbie King that's called Falling in Love with Your Business, or Falling Back in Love with Your Business. I can't remember exactly the title, so I'll put it in the show notes. But it's a great book. It really taps into your thoughts and the power of your thoughts, and how you can become more aware of what you think and how you can have more control over what you want to think.
I think you're referring to Loving Your Business.
Yeah, I thought it was called Falling in Love with Your Business or something.
Yeah, it looks like it's called Loving Your Business. Rethink your relationship with your company and make it work for you. I don't know that one. That's a good one.
It's a good book, and I think
a lot of our entrepreneurs need to fall back in love with our businesses, because we have an idea and then we get a certain number of years in and we're like, ugh, why am I doing this? I want to shoot it. And
yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
I want to put this down. Absolutely, that's true. And I think there are a lot of people that have that 9 to 5 mentality that turns into, I say, like 5 to 9, 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. At some point you go, oh my God, do I even have a life anymore? Is it really only this business? And I think that book really helps you get a grip on your thoughts, and helps you to think thoughts that are more useful about your business and about your life.
That's a great one. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Sarah Lockwood, welcome to the Conscious Entrepreneur Podcast. Really glad you're here. Really glad to be co-creating this with you. Thanks for your support, and really excited to see what comes next.
Okay, I will see you guys next week.